Hey guys, it's Rena Jadov, and today is all about multivitamins and supplements. Hi, Dr. Nuzum, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And Dr. Nuzum is going to answer every question that I and you have ever had about our supplements. Why? Because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So many people having it. So I know you're having one, whether it's a multivitamin or something specific like a weight loss supplement or a long hair supplement or a skin supplement, name it. There's supplements. Of course, every woman that's pregnant is put on a supplement. So I know you've had one, and I know you're going to want to listen to this because we are going to dive deep into the essence of the most important thing you put in your mouth probably every single day. Now, why Dr. Nuzum? Because he is a naturopathic physician, an osteopath, and as well as a doctor of Oriental medicine. But what's fascinating is that, in fact, he was the youngest physician to be licensed at the age of 20. Wow. Dr. Nuzum has a website, drnuzum.com. Check it out for a lot of more stuff. And of course, he's one of the leading experts and educators in this field, but more importantly, he's done a ton of research on something called fulvic acid, which I think we're going to dive into a little bit as well, but also just he is a formulator. In fact, he's a chief formulator for a brand called Organics. Ta-da! And so, as you all know, when I interview folks, I actually like to try their stuff. So today's interview is not about his supplements at all. It's about the general state of the supplement industry as well as how these are done. Dr. Nuzum, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, our pleasure. So let's start at the very basics. What exactly is a vitamin? And you were explaining this right before I hit record in a beautiful way.
Well, vitamins that come from plants, okay, are byproducts of the whole photosynthesis process. So the plant goes through photosynthesis, it grabs, sunlight and mixes it with water and comes out with sugars and all these good things that we eat in plants, right? Well, there are nutrients in the plants that are not mineral. Okay, so your minerals come from the soil, right? And they go from being a inorganic, unorganized mineral that your body can't use to a organic, organized mineral that your body can use. So that's the minerals in the plant, right? The other things that you have in there are polysaccharides, subsugars, vitamins, phytochemicals, these other components there within the plant. And what's interesting is all the things that aren't mineral are actually different configurations of captured sunlight. Okay, so vitamins are, different configurations of captured sunlight that the plant has metabolized and created for us. And so vitamins from a plant source are, they bring the light back in your body. It's amazing. They actually restore what's missing within the system. Now the downside on this is that not all supplements are made of plant-based materials. Okay, they're not they're not taking these vitamins out of plants, out of fruits and vegetables or plants, right? And in those cases, what's happening is they're synthesizing these things typically out of petroleum byproducts.
Jeez.
Okay, which
are toxic.
Are very toxic, okay? But you can, in a lab, synthesize these because all vitamins are different configurations. They're basically a sugar molecule, okay, that is configured a little different. And so we call them subsugars in the lab. We'll call them, but they're basically a vitamin is a type of sugar, not like table sugar, not like that. And one of the things that in our discussion earlier that you pointed out and is correct is that the more deficient someone is, the more they will be prone to craving sugar. So sugar cravings are actually a very big indicator that you are deficient in vitamins.
And when you say vitamins, you don't mean this. You mean you're deficient in the amazing basket of fresh vegetables and fruits that nature provides us, which you're not somehow getting enough of, which leads to these cravings. And of course, I'm a huge sugar addict. Anyone who's read any of my articles knows that. But sugar addiction is a huge issue, not just for me, but for a majority of Americans, to the point where they're adding extra sugar and stuff just to make us eat more of them. Look at these multivitamins. They're meant to be really good, but you know what? They're so sweet. I feel like I could eat them all day long. And I think that's the goal. Like, hey, how do we get her to eat some more of these? So she can buy 2 bottles a month instead of 1 bottle a month. But the essence of that, so if you're watching this and you've got sugar issues like I do, what Dr. Nuzum is telling us today is that that is a clear indication that you don't have enough light in yourself, in your body. And what that really means is that you've got to bring in a lot more of the fresh fruits and vegetables. And of course, if you can't, that's when you go into supplements. Am I right?
Correct. That's what supplements are for. They're for supplementing what doesn't occur in your diet. That's what a supplement is for.
So let's start with that. How do we know what's missing in our diet?
Well, if you're eating the standard American diet, it only supplies trace amounts of 17 essential vitamins and minerals that you need on a daily basis, okay? Only 17, okay? Now, depending on which scale you use, there's between 73 and 90 essential nutrients that you need on a daily basis, okay? So if you're eating the standard American diet, you're only getting 17 of those. So you're somewhere between 20 to down to maybe 17, 18% of the actual nutrients that you need on a daily basis if you're eating a standard American diet.
Incredible.
So,
and how many do we need? So 17 is what I'm getting. How many do I need?
You need between 73 and 90.
Wow, I'm getting barely 20% of that.
Barely 20%. Right. Exactly. So, let me give you an example. Okay, this is how I explain this to students and how I explain this to my patients. Let's say we go to your car and we randomly remove 80% of the nuts and bolts from your car. How fast do you think your car is going to break down? You know, if you even try to turn it on.
That's a good example.
You know, in another analogy, well, let's say we're going to fly to, you know, someplace. Okay, we're going to fly to Hawaii, right? Would you get on an airplane that was where we randomly removed 80% of the nuts and bolts?
Heck no.
Oh no. No.
I wouldn't get on the plane if you removed even 10% of the nuts and bolts.
Right. So if people are eating the standard American diet and that's all they're getting,
yeah,
why are we surprised when they get sick?
Yeah. Why is that? It's because we're told somehow we don't need nutrition. And I don't know how that gets into our psyche as the norm. Like, and I can say this because I've had this conversation with my 19-year-old around diet. You know, she's in college and I say, did you get a good helping of, you know, fruits and veggies today? And, you know, I get these LOLs, I get these texts back, this LOL. I'm like, why are you laughing? What did I say that was funny? This was not a joke. I am reminding you that caffeine, you know, 3 times a day does not constitute a diet. So, you know, I get another LOL, like the all caps LOL, LOL to infinity, mom, kind of go away. But, you know, it's a very, very critical point that you're making that I'm jesting about, which is that even to me, I mean, you know, Harvard MBA, Wharton undergrad, and all my life, I just kind of thought, you know, I can have just a cup of tea in the morning with some cookies, and I can have, you know, just a sandwich at lunch, and oh my God, how healthy am I? I'm having a sandwich, you know, some more kind of crappy pizza or something for dinner. And I thought that I was doing really well because my pizza had some veggies on it. We have lost understanding what a good diet means. So share with everyone, what should a non-standard American diet look like that would allow us to incorporate the 70 or so vitamins and minerals?
Here's Well, first off, here's the problem. Here's a big issue. Okay, if you're not eating organic food, number one, the chances of you eating GMO product, I don't even call it food, it's product, it's a product, it's something, it's a genetically modified organism, it's not a real plant, okay? Your chances of getting GMO product in your diet are extremely high. Okay, so you're very probable of getting GMO foods, if you will, in your food chain if you're not eating organic food. An issue that is not publicized with GMO product is that GMO product cause your body to they train your body to absorb less and less, fewer and fewer nutrients. Okay, so a GMO plant can only absorb between 11 and 17 to 18 nutrients from the soil. Okay, there are
Wow.
there's 105 elements on the periodic table, by the way.
Wow.
You know, and so 11 to anything in the teens is nowhere even close to what that plant should have in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're not eating organic food, as my point is, if you're not eating organic food, the chances of you getting GMO product in your food chain are really high, number one. Number two, we have in our food chain, things are so processed. This was we had a professor at one of the naturopathic colleges I used to be a professor at. He was the nutrition professor, and his he would come into the first class for the freshmen when they started. He'd put the soup is good food soup cans
Mm-hmm.
out on his desk, and what he would do is he would tell everyone the history of that can, how it came into being, and what the contents, where they came from, how that all arrived. Okay, so this soup that you would go get, you're supposed to go get when you have a cold, right? This chicken,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Campbell's chicken noodle soup.
You know, um, he's like, okay, so 80% of what is in that can was grown on foreign soil where there's no EPA, and under contracts with big multinational companies that are the manufacturers of things like Roundup and those
Mm-hmm.
types of things. And so these foods, this crop that is being picked or grown and then picked to be utilized to make the constituents in the soup can, start off as this GMO crop.
Right.
It's sprayed with who knows what.
Yeah.
There are lots of countries out there that still use DDT,
Yeah.
and it comes into our food chain via offshore, offshore farming practices.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's still in our food chain because of that. Okay, it's these GMO fields that they're using these things on. So you got 80% of what's in the can started out as GMO product. They pick the vegetables, the fruits, or whatever it is that they're going to put in the can early, so that they can make the truck ride from the
Mm-hmm.
farmland to the coast, so they can be sent here. When they arrive to the United States, these fruits and vegetables are then radiated to kill off any bugs that they might. Okay, so we run them through a microwave once they get here, which denatures any nutrients that they had to begin with. Okay, which they didn't come with very much nutrients to begin with. One, that's a GMO, which doesn't absorb much nutrients from the soil to begin with. Two, even a GMO product, if you pick the fruit or the vegetable too soon, it didn't ripen, therefore it never got the full extent of the nutrients it was supposed to have. It
The
could have
light.
possibly
Yeah.
had. The little amount that it could have had, it didn't get. Okay. So, okay. Then they send it, in the truck to the boat, from the boat to the dock. At the dock, they send it through the microwave, at which point it's sent off to the processing plant where they remove 90% of any nutrients that
of nothing.
whatever was
90% of
left.
nothing is still nothing. At that point, it just doesn't matter what you're doing to it.
Right, right. And then they put it, through this whole cooking process, and they remove basically all nutrients that it may have ever had. They take that soup, pour it in a petroleum-laced tin lead can,
Oh.
send it off to your grocery store, and charge you for it.
And they tell you that you're going to get better.
Oh,
and
yes.
Somehow the soup is going to heal that cold.
Or it's going to suppress your immune system so much that your immune system just can't fight anymore and you don't have any symptoms.
Like my adrenals, my adrenals apparently did the dead cat bounce at some point where they were so far overworked that they just shut down. And so you're right.
Right.
You just shut your immune system down, you'll have no symptoms.
No symptoms.
Oh my God. So the biggest challenge we face today, as you're describing, is the fact that eating for nutrients is close to impossible if you're not crazy mindful about where you shop. So a little plug for all the farmers markets nationwide. Absolutely. That's what I do. Every Saturday, rain, snow, shine, whatever, I'm at the farmers market, and I'm, as some of the doctors who've written fun books said, I'm smelling the produce, I'm touching the produce, I'm smearing it on my body. I'm like, come to me, microbes, come to me. My gut was such a mess. I was told it would take me 5 years to heal my gut. So I know I'm only like 2.5 years into a 5-year process of rebuilding my rainforest inside. With that said, so my question was, what kind of a diet would you need to be on? And I think the first answer is you need to be on a diet where you're eating organic, locally farmed, locally sourced produce, which is bought on the weekends because it was picked yesterday. And I always ask, even in the farmers market, you have the organic stalls and you have the non-organic. And I'll, typically only go to the organic farms. And I always ask, when was this picked? And they will carry stuff which is not picked yesterday. They'll be like, right. Oh, that's been sitting there, a couple of weeks. Okay, well, I will skip that today.
Right.
I'm just saying, show me what you picked yesterday by your hands, and that's what I'm eating today. And yes, for those who are rolling their eyes going, geez, she's a little nutty, and by the way, that's a lot more expensive. Yeah, so my grocery bill, instead of, I don't know, $30 will be $35. Do I think it's worth paying the extra $5? Heck yeah.
Well, here's another statistic that the leading cause of bankruptcy in our country is medical bills.
Nail in time and all those cliched sayings, right?
Right. So you will pay in your health and in your wealth, or you can pay in your wealth. So that's our options, really.
Absolutely.
We can pay with our time, our well-being, our health, being sick, and then have to pay the doctor anyways, in the hospital, in the ambulance, and the every other thing, or we can pay with our wealth to prevent all this from happening.
Absolutely.
And build our health, make ourselves stronger and healthier. Here's the thing with this is something I got out of Oriental medicine, studying Oriental medicine, was that in order to become chronically ill, a person's ability to adapt has to break down. Okay, and if your ability to adapt doesn't break down, then you will bounce out of the illness at some point. I mean, it won't take so long. If you're ill and you've been ill for a long time and it just seems to drag on and your symptoms just never really go away, it's because your capacity to adapt and your ability to adapt has been broken. Okay, and what happens once you can't adapt anymore, or you don't adapt efficiently anymore, okay, at that point, your body, instead of adapting to a situation and overcoming it, okay, it accommodates that. Okay, so it accommodates the stress, it accommodates the toxicity, it accommodates the infection, it accommodates, you name it.
Wow.
Okay, in so in natural medicine, our whole job in natural medicine is to restore that capacity to adapt.
Mm.
And it really comes down to that. That's really the bottom line. That's everything
Mhm.
we do has to be aimed at restoring that capacity to adapt.
Mhm.
And that's, you take young mothers like yourself, you take people, going to school, holding down a job, raising a family, all running a business,
Mhm.
whew, you know, there's so much. It's so demanding.
Mhm.
It's so, it extracts so
Mhm.
much from you
Mhm.
that if you're not putting back in, it's like a bank account. Okay, you're born with $1 million, but if you write $1,000 check every day and don't put anything back in, you're gonna run out of money. you know and
And
so
that's what we all are. We're
I
100
exactly,
million. The
yeah,
100
right.
million Americans that are basically bankrupt health-wise.
Yep,
And
exactly,
so that's
exactly.
a beautiful analogy. And I hope that this is helping those who are listening and watching sort of really internalize where the breakdown begins, because that's the other issue. When I got sick, I was like, oh, but I'm so healthy. How could this happen to me?
Right.
What is happening? My body's letting me down. And not for a moment did I think, what have I been doing to my body that I have brought it to the stage where it's finally just quit on me?
Right.
28 symptoms is a lot of symptoms. My body was like, I'm basically done with you. You're a moron. You just don't know how to take care of me, and I'm done. And so I think you're, very in a beautiful way articulating that it really is a debit credit. And so we are told to eat, I don't know, what is it, 6 to 7 helping servings of like this much
Right.
fruits and vegetables. What do you think is actually the real number of fruits and vegetables we should be eating on a daily basis?
Here's what I do with patients when I get them started. This is the basic, because here's the thing, the worst possible thing for you to do is try to change everything at one time.
Mm-hmm.
uh, that will bring on
Breakdown.
failure faster than anything.
Yes,
You'll break
it
down.
ain't happening.
It
Yeah,
will,
it's not happening.
no, don't do that, because that will bring you to failure and it'll discourage you. That's terrible. Don't do that. And so I've been in practice for 24 years. So in those 24 years, what I've found is that working with patients, taking them not necessarily in baby steps, but the Titanic is heading straight for an iceberg, and if we don't start turning it, it's going to run into that iceberg. It's
Mm-hmm.
destined to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we can change that trajectory, but we have to start with definite changes that start offsetting the course. We got to change the course, right? So here's what I have people start off. We have, let's say, 3 ounces of protein, okay, on your plate. 3 ounces of protein.
Show us what 3 ounces looks like, because I doubt
3
most people know what
ounces.
that is.
I never had to use a catcher's mitt. I have these ginormous hands. so, so basically, let's say you're going to eat a piece of meat, okay? You have a piece of meat. If you were to have a piece of meat 3 times a day, you take your fist, you'd have to, about half of your fist would be the amount of meat that you could handle consuming 3 times a day.
Interesting.
Okay. So, because your fist is proportionate to your stomach.
Right.
Okay. And so about half the size of your fist would be about the amount of meat. Okay.
Got it.
So if that's the amount of meat that you have, you want to have about the same amount of a starch, which would be a sweet potato or any kind of starch. Okay. You want to have about the same amount of a fruit, and you want to have twice as much of vegetables on your plate.
Non-starchy vegetables.
Non-starchy vegetables, so green leafies,
Salad.
salad type thing, you know.
Cucumber
So
cans.
right, get in, and you want as much variety as possible.
Got it.
That's the thing.
Colors.
Colors. Now remember what I said about the okay, so the the colors in vegetables. Here's a whole fruits and vegetables. Here's a whole nother thing. Those uh, uh, proanthocyanidins, the polysaccharides, those phytochemicals that are your pigments, are your protectins, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're the most powerful forms of antioxidants that we have in our food chain.
Mm-hmm.
And the colors, they're natural pigments in the okay, what makes a grape red or purple is a thing called proanthocyanidin. You also find that that's the redness that comes out in red wine from the grapes. Okay, it's also in the peel of a red apple. It's okay. There's okay. It's in.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find it in red peppers
Mm-hmm.
or
Pomegranate.
pomegranate or in beets or
Mm-hmm.
all these different vegetables and fruits have these pigments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those pigments are the most powerful antioxidants that we can consume. Okay,
Yeah.
um, I mean we're talking like multiple thousands of times more powerful than vitamin C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so not percent, we're talking thousands of times more.
Wow.
In
Wow.
when we're consuming these things, all of those colors, okay, are concentrations of different spectrums of light.
Mm.
Okay, I know that this might sound
Mm-hmm.
totally weird, but from a physics,
No, you're right. It
it's
is. It's just light.
exactly what's happening, right? So we
Yeah.
get yellow light, we have red light,
Yeah. Yeah. Color is light.
all these different light forms in the food, and so you want to have as many of these as possible.
I'm never going to see food again the same way, Dr. Nuzum. I'm going to look at that pomegranate that's sitting in my kitchen going, you are so full of light. You have changed how I look at fruits and veg, anything with color. Sorry, please continue.
But it's true. This is, it's really simple when you think about it. The basics of all these different medical things that we tend to discuss and everything. I get on a lot of interviews like this, and we're talking, medical situations, medical this, medical that. But honestly, the processes, the basic processes that we have to work with are very simple. They're very, very simple.
So I got the plate. We've got this much of protein, this much of starch, this
Right.
much of fruit, and twice of the non-starchy green veggies, and that's a meal.
That's your meal, right?
And that's your meal. And you want to have as many colors, and you want to have it seasonal.
Right. Exactly. And starting off with that is super simple.
Yeah.
Template. You're not going to go hungry. You're not going to starve.
None of us is going to starve. If you look at the obesity numbers, trust me, no one is starving for a very long time. So we'll be fine.
We'll be fine. Exactly. So, that gives you a template. It's a template. It's not perfect. You talk to any nutritionist, no, it's not perfect, but it's way better than the standard American diet.
Yeah.
And if you can start there, you can get better from there. But you have to have a starting point. So we have to
No
give
grains. No grains
Yep.
in your starting.
Grains could be your starch. You may have some sort of grain there is your starch,
Got it. So instead of the sweet potato, you could have wild rice.
Wild rice.
Or lentils or kidney beans. I got it. So that's the substitute.
Yeah. Sure. Exactly. So you have the, other things that could be in there. I lump legumes as starches personally.
Okay. They're heavy on starch.
They're heavy in starch.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they cause digestive issues.
Yeah.
It's
I still can't do them.
Starch, right?
I still can't do chickpeas and kidney beans. You're missing herbs as well. To what extent do you consider those to be sort of a priority as opposed to optional?
Herbs are the nutrition of your diet. Okay, that's where that's concentrated nutrition.
Yes.
Let me we'll talk botanical medicine real quick. Okay, this is plant medicine. All right, so you have typically your leaf herbs. Okay, are things that you could consume more consistently. In the medicine in those typically isn't quite as potent. Okay, so you can do it every day for long periods of time, right? It's just, I'm generalizing real quick here. So just generalizing. So now that's the leaf. Now let's go to a flower. A flower may have, some medicinal properties, but it's very gentle. And that's something, again, that you could consume very consistently and never really run into any trouble. You get into bark. Okay, now the medicinal properties step it up a notch.
Like cinnamon?
Like cinnamon, okay, is a great example. Yeah, cinnamon. So that steps it up a notch. Okay, so parsley, okay, excellent medicine. Okay, parsley is actually my favorite gout remedy, by the way.
Oh.
And I'll let everybody have that one. That one's
Thank
parsley
you.
In 2 to 3 ounces of fresh parsley a day normally knocks gout out of the ballpark. It's
really
super simple. Typically costs you about $1 a day.
Unbelievable.
And,
are you drinking the water, or are you actually just blending it in and taking
blending it, eating it? I even have I've had one patient here recently that he just he scrambled 2 eggs with his bunch of parsley every morning. He just ate it that way. In it took 2 days. It was 48 hours. His gout was gone. It was pretty
That's
interesting.
Incredible.
Super ridiculously simple remedy, and it's right there. Most people have it on their plate and they throw it away.
Yes. It's a garnish meant to be tossed away on top of a steak. Right? So we've got a sense of how to eat. Now, clearly no one's doing that. We know that. And it's hard. So everyone goes into supplements. So let's talk about the entire chain of vitamin. How does a vitamin get produced? So you're a formulator.
Right.
In really quickly and briefly and in kind of layperson's lingo, how do you formulate a vitamin? So, for something like 7M as an example, or the Metaplex, talk very briefly, how do you decide what to put in it? Where do you guys source? Where do vitamin companies source materials? How does it get put in? And then how do I, as a consumer, know which brand to buy? I mean, there's so many brands. There's thousands of brands. And everybody touts these days, oh, we're natural, we're all natural. And then you look at the ingredients and there's all kinds of crap in there. So what brands, eventually we'll talk about kind of what brands, et cetera. But let's just start first with, how does a vitamin get made?
Well, first off, what we would do is looking at, if you came to me, you said, "Wait, I want this whole, I want a line of supplements." I said, "Okay, well, what are you wanting these supplements to do?" Would be our first question. Okay, well, I want, on a prenatal vitamin, I want a sport vitamin, I want, children's vitamin, something like that, right? Real basic. So there are guidelines as to what a multivitamin is and can be. Okay, so you have some parameters that are guidelines. We actually have parameters that we have to operate within in order to call it a multivitamin.
All right, so now that we know that you do this for a living, tell us a secret. What vitamin would you not put in your mouth or give your kids because of where it's sourced? So what are the worst countries for sourcing ingredients? And so that we all can look at a multivitamin and say, that's not going in my mouth because it says the ingredients were sourced here.
This is really sad. I'm a doctor of Oriental medicine, studied Chinese medicine, studied Taiwanese medicine, Japanese medicine, but I wouldn't buy anything from over there.
Got it. So even though there's tons of good stuff that comes from China and they claim it's organic, because God knows I went through that. I mean, part of my healing was acupuncture, and every acupuncture therapist would give me a whole bunch of pills. Half of them are still lying in my kitchen. But you're saying it doesn't matter that it says organic, don't touch it.
No,
Okay.
most of we actually have in
Really good
our
to know.
group, in our formulating group, we have two scientists that they actually test all ingredients that come into our lab before we ever do anything with it. It actually has to stay in quarantine for 2 weeks, and we do
Wow.
testing on it for 2 weeks before we accept it. We turn away 4 times more raw material than we actually use.
Wow. Wow.
It-
So China, would you
to give
put
you an
India?
idea,
Yeah. And would you put India in there too?
India is what's interesting. Um, India has far better technology than China.
Oh,
And,
that's good to know.
I'm not kidding you. They actually surpassed China technologically by far. Now, China has a larger workforce.
Hmm.
They have more working capital at the moment, but technologically and I would say in your working practices, India's far better.
So the product comes in, it stays in quarantine. You then get a bunch of people testing it through.
Right,
Okay.
right. Um, it has to be exactly what we asked for, which is
Okay.
not always the case. Sometimes you order echinacea and they send you something else. And
Quality control issues.
yes, yes, that's definitely. Or they'll send you mostly echinacea and the rest of it's sand. That does happen periodically, and
Oh, wow.
it's amazing what, and it's way more regulated within the United States.
Hmm.
Um, but there are, like I said, most of your South American countries have pretty good standards
Okay.
with their production and everything. And uh, one thing is they don't have the money to put the
Right.
pesticides and herbicides on the crop. And it's still contrary to their thought process. Why would you put poison on your food?
It's contrary to everybody's thought process. I hate to say that, but it's contrary to every thought process unless it's profit over people. So to me, the only time it makes sense is when you're talking about yields in a way that allows you to maximize profit, sort of wringing that last dollar out. And at that point, it's not about the health
No.
and wellness of anybody. It's just
Right.
about what can I do to maximize profit out of this, and that's really what we're living in. So you've got these products now, they're processed, and then your formulation comes in, right? You've
Right. We have
articulated the ratio.
our our recipe, kind
Hmm.
of like your cookie recipe.
Yeah.
We make a recipe and we have to take and blend that recipe. If there's multiple ingredients, we have to blend them. We have to test to make sure that once they're blended, we didn't damage anything.
Mm.
Okay, which is another
Okay.
thing. Um, we do what we actually specialize in is delivery systems. And so that's where the fulvic and humic acids and all those types of things, that's where all that comes in. So if let's say you have an herbal supplement that's bark and roots, okay, cinnamon bark and,
Turmeric
slippery,
root.
yeah, yeah, exactly, turmeric root, something like that. So you got ginger and, so these are,
Hmm.
um, those ingredients need a different delivery system than if you came over and took asparagus and cilantro. Okay,
Got it. Got
see what
it.
I'm saying? So the chemistry is totally different. In so what will deliver the ingredients out of asparagus and cilantro won't necessarily deliver turmeric and cinnamon. Okay, and so we have to I use the word tool or tweak the
Hmm.
delivery systems for whatever it is that we're trying to put into the body. And so that's something that we do a lot of work with. But typically, you take your mix, where you have to test your end product, make sure that it isn't nothing got damaged in the processing process. You have if it goes into a capsule or a tablet or a liquid at that point, you have to do the appropriate things. Sometimes a liquid, um, sometimes a liquid has to go in a hot bottle, okay, so that it doesn't ferment while it's in the bottle. Other things don't ferment as easy, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to it, a lot that goes into all of that. And it's not just throwing ingredients into a vat and hoping something good comes out.
And which companies do you trust? Who, other than obviously organics,
Sure.
do you believe actually does everything that's needed to create a vitamin that actually can be absorbed and deliver the results versus becoming, as they say, expensive urine?
I have a few. I have a few that I work with. I have, well, obviously, drnuzum.com.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. The number one brand.
Right, then organics. Also, Microbe Formulas is another company I've worked real closely with. They're a good company, really good company, very, very high quality. Their quality controls are excellent. I like Life Extension.
Oh, I like that brand too.
They're very good.
Okay. Pure formulation?
Pure's is good. They're good. I'm not real keen on nutrient isolates. Okay, so I'm not real big on taking thiamine, riboflavin. Okay, B1, B2, B3, B6, B12, all separately. There's
so you believe in the aggregate formulations?
Yes, I'm a synergist. I like synergy. I see more toxicological problems. Okay, they end up with more toxicity issues when they're taking, zinc, copper, magnesium, calcium, B12, vitamin C, all these individual nutrients, and they spend a lot of money and don't feel any better. That's something that I see. I've watched that clinically for years, and one of the things that I've been told over and over and over and over and over again is that once patients started working with me, it actually was less expensive to pay my fee, as their doctor, as their consultant, and things like that, and purchase the more expensive supplements that I had them on. They actually were spending less money every month doing that than they were buying, gobs and gobs of other things that they didn't feel any better on, and that's, unfortunately, that is extremely common.
So let's talk about toxicology, because there's these news releases often get shut down because, of course, our media is very, very good at not releasing information that might be detrimental to commercial practices. So, how many people die of, kidney issues because of taking some supplement isn't something that gets reported as widely as it probably should, versus the supplements that tout some benefit. And of course, those get widely promoted. So at what point should someone start worrying about overloading their organs because they're taking way too many supplements and or are taking toxic supplements? So how do I, as a consumer, be wary and be informed?
One would be, my goodness, one would be to look at, with different brands. I'm trying to, because I'm on the backside of all this. How do I tell somebody on the other side of the counter? Looking at companies, whether they have testing or whether they are they proprietary. Are they open about their ingredients? I have a lot of proprietary blends myself. I will give you all the ingredients, but I won't tell you the amounts
The
of
ratios.
them. The ratios.
But how do you even believe? Right, but how do we even believe that what they're saying is in it is in it? I know there's a couple of labs,
right.
There's a couple of websites that have started that are testing, right? Labdoor, I think, is one.
Mike Adams is really good for that.
Okay.
the health ranger. He's excellent.
Ah,
He'd be somebody
that's
I
right.
would, you could send if if something's questionable, you can send it to him, and he has a fee, but he can test it for you. That would be a third party thing that would be excellent if you're concerned, about the cleanliness or the quality of your product.
Mhm,
That would be
mhm.
definite way to go there. Number one. Number two, if you're taking more than 10 supplements, you're probably taking too many. It would be if you have 10 different bottles on your countertop, I wouldn't take more than 10.
I'm not inviting you to my kitchen.
Well, the thing is, I've been working with patients for a long time, and they come in. I've had patients come in with garbage bag fulls of supplements that they're taking every day. In There is such thing as too much of a good thing,
Hmm.
you know. And the beautiful thing about it is once you stop taking in too many supplements, any damage that was done starts to correct itself almost immediately. It's kind of like
How long does the body take to reverse the damage?
it depends on how bad the damage was.
So if you've been
Depends on
taking
how
lots of
extensive.
vitamins for a year, how long would it take?
A month maybe.
Okay.
Shouldn't take very long. No,
Okay.
it shouldn't. It's years of
Got it.
hyper dosage. That you know even I have people use we call it the vitamin C flush. Okay, it's something we do in some of our detox programs. And you start off with 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C when you first wake up in the morning. You add another 1,000 every hour till it moves your bowels. Okay, and that's okay to do every once in a while. You don't do that every day. That
Right.
if you do that every day, that's not good. Okay, but
Right.
it's no different than maybe a glass of wine every day isn't going to hurt you, but a bottle of wine every day has consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that wine's bad, but
Yeah.
it's dose related. And
Yeah.
so um, in when you're consuming individual nutrients,
Hmm.
okay, uh, if their ratios aren't where they should be for your individual physiology, the chances of you creating other nutritional deficiencies increase. So you take calcium because let's say you're in your 50s and you need calcium, right?
The doctor said you need a
Doctor said
calcium
you need calcium,
supplement or a
right?
dairy. Uh-huh.
Right. So you start taking 1,000 milligrams of calcium every day. Well, in that pond of nutrients in your body, you just throw a huge boulder out there and you're making major waves. And it's going to offset all those other nutrients because all you're doing is taking one nutrient in and you need 70 some of these nutrients. So that goes back to whole food nutrients. Whole food nutrition is really where it's at. And that's what I practice, it's what I preach, it's what I do with patients. That's the way to go. You have to have whole food supplements. Our body, the other thing is if it's something that's synthetic, um, if it's a mineral chelate, uh, it'll say ATE on the end of the, you know, might be glutenate or
Hmm.
uh,
Steroid.
theorate or aspartate or could be there's all kinds of things. That was chemically created. That's not a naturally occurring compound.
Oh, that's such a good advice.
you
Stay
know
away from the ATE
those-
endings. Hmm.
they're better than the ides. So if you take a calcium chloride, that's actually very dangerous. You cause all kinds of problems. Calcium carbonate, okay, yeah, that's you know fairly benign. um, but taking large amounts of either would be detrimental, especially if you're taking it by itself. And so smaller doses, wider range of nutrients is far better. And your chances of toxicity go down to almost nothing. Number one. Number two, your synergy. Okay, because if you eat a stalk of celery, you're getting 70 some nutrients in that stalk of celery.
Exactly.
They're designed to be in there in that
synergistic,
right,
homogeneous way that your
right,
body can absorb. So juicing is one of my favorite ways to actually take a multivitamin. It's like,
right.
throw a bunch of veggies in my Angel masticating juicer and just gobble it down, chase it down with something yummy after, because I don't juice fruits. I'll only juice veggies, but sometimes it's like a multivitamin. It's
right. It really is.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're getting.
So where do you get calcium from? Broccoli?
Broccoli. Oh yeah, that's excellent source. Broccoli. All your leafy vegetables, all your greens have calcium in it. They also are going to have a high amount of magnesium.
To balance out the calcium.
Right. And more people are magnesium deficient than there are calcium deficient.
So true.
Most people that have osteoporosis have plenty of calcium in their body. They don't have enough magnesium or vitamin D3 to manage the calcium.
Yeah. Which is, that's back to, there's so much fake news around calcium and osteoporosis.
Right.
That, thank you for sharing that. So if you have osteoporosis or you're worried about osteoporosis, Dr. Nuzum, share again, what is the exact formulation they should be having?
They actually should have about the same amount of calcium and magnesium on a daily basis. They'll also need large amounts, not the 400 units a day of vitamin D3. They need typically in the 2,000 to 5,000 unit range to actually get the minerals into their bones. It takes a lot more. It takes a lot more of the vitamin D3 to get that done.
So we're going to talk now very briefly about how do you make sure that these vitamins you're eating actually get to the cells, because you mentioned a lot of people will take these vitamins and they say, nothing happens. And we've read a lot of articles that talk about, multivitamins are you're just flushing good money down your toilet. And for a lot of people, that is actually true, because the multivitamin may not be formulated in a way that your body can absorb. So for a variety of reasons. So can you share what are some of the reasons that a body doesn't absorb? And then for those people, what do you recommend in terms of channel or delivery?
I have a story for you. The largest patient I ever treated weighed over 640 pounds. In he was an enormous man. His business was the portable porta potty business is what he called it. And so he had the construction site or the portable toilet. They have it at some public events and whatnot. He had those. He rented those out. That's what his business was. And so he came to see me for some issues, and I had this workup for him, and he's like, "Well, I'm not taking that stuff." I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, those are vitamins, aren't they?" I said, "Well, yes, of course." He's like, "Well, I ain't taking that stuff." He said, "That doesn't work." I said, "Well, what makes you, okay, so where are you coming from here?" And he said, "I'll tell you what, this weekend you come out to my yard and we'll have a discussion." So I met with him, went out to his yard where they cleaned the portable toilets, and he had mountains, like 15 or 20 mountains of one-a-day vitamins that still had you could go through,
no way.
Store, and they still had the name written across the tablet.
Oh my God.
It was terrible. And he's like, so I took him back, had him come back in to the office, and we took each one of the capsules and tablets that he was going to be taking, and we took 4 ounces of distilled water, 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, mix that up, drop the capsule in there. If it didn't disperse it didn't open up and disperse, if the tablet didn't fall apart in that solution, it probably wouldn't in your stomach either. So that was a real simple, easy test. And everything that I gave him it did fall apart in that solution. So that tells you the the capacity of the tablet or the capsule to disperse in your gut. So
Yeah.
if it doesn't break down, it's not, you're not going to absorb anything out of it,
Clearly, looking at a kind of a vitamin bottle, looking on the back, what am I looking for to know whether this thing's gonna actually open up versus, for example, gummies
Sure.
versus, for example, sublinguals versus
Mhm.
sprays, right? So
Okay.
I've got a B12 that I rub, I've got a spray for vitamin D, I've got some gummies. Um,
Sure. All of
share.
those
Mhm.
all of those are going to be pretty quick absorbed. I mean, they'll hit your bloodstream pretty quick. The anything that's transdermal that goes on your skin will be in your bloodstream typically in about 30 seconds.
Wow.
And most things are designed to penetrate through the skin that fast. Um, Sublinguals might take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes for something to hit the bloodstream. When you're doing like a gummy absorbs just as fast as the sugar absorbs.
Instant.
Quick.
Like that.
I like that.
Because I
Um,
had a gut dysbiosis. I mean, I had
sure.
severe gut dysbiosis. And
Mhm.
one of the integrative doctors said to me, sweetheart, you can keep downing all those vitamins. Your gut doesn't have the capacity to absorb. So
Just
she's the
longer.
one that put me on initially the transdermals
Right.
and said, as far as you can, rub stuff on you.
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
Great. So then um, when you get into tablets and capsules, tablet technology has really improved. There's, uh, when I first started years ago, tablets were terrible. In There's so many binders. And you had to have like an excess of
Mhm.
stomach acid to even start breaking them things down. They were terrible. Um, now they have tablets that start to dissolve almost as well as a gel capsule. In So those are things. Something that has lots of binders, lots of inert ingredients typically isn't, that's not as high quality. Um, so if you're looking at the label in the back, you look down at the bottom, and the inactive ingredients or the inert ingredients, there's a lot of those. Then there's a lot of binders. There's a lot of things in that.
Mm.
That's
So
just
liquid is better than
liquid.
gummy.
Liquid
Gummy.
will absorb faster.
Okay. So
Yes,
liquids are better, gummies are better, sprays are better, sublinguals are better than the tablets. And then
typically yes.
typically, and then in the tablet, you're looking for what are the ingredients in terms of beyond the vitamins and minerals to
Right,
see what the composition is.
right.
And if you've got a lot of binders and stuff like that, I mean, there's often they use like magnesium.
Steroid, and sure.
Exactly. They've got all the stuff in
If
there. And
if the list of ingredients that are inactive ingredients are close to the same number of ingredients as you have in your supplement, it's probably
plus.
not so good.
I would say
Um,
even 50%. I mean, if 50% are binders, you probably should still toss it because
right, right. Not
that just doesn't sound good to
it's
me.
just it's not going to be very effective. And especially again, we go back to, like you said, with the gut dysbiosis. Uh, you have a hard time absorbing even juice.
Oh yeah, yes.
It's
Been there, felt it. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
what time of the day, with or without food? There's all kinds of
Mm,
information on
right.
what is the best time of the day to have a
Um,
multivitamin.
typically, um, typically before breakfast and before dinner are typically about 12 hours apart for a vitamin. If you're taking vitamins, those are the typical best times of the day to take it. A lot of times you don't want to take them too late at night because they can stimulate your mitochondria. You do that, you're going to be up at night.
Hmm?
um, you take them. Some people, in particular with B vitamins upset people's stomach pretty consistently, and so if that's the case, you want to find something that has a lower dose of the B vitamins, and you may want to take that with food.
Mm.
That could be. could be an
But
issue.
otherwise, you can take without food. I think what I'm hearing you say is before
Right,
breakfast without food
right,
is just fine.
right.
Got it. And Ayurveda, I believe, or anyone who does herbs or herbal remedies typically says you shouldn't take anything more than 3 months and then you want to
Right.
pause. So talk a little bit about that. Does that rule apply to multivitamins
That
and how long
rule
do you pause?
that rule applies to everything, in my opinion. Um, the uh, There's an interesting thing. Let's say you start a vegan diet today. You stay on that strictly for 90 days. Between day 90 and day 95, that diet will go from being very healthy, health promoting, to you'll start having allergic responses to almost everything that you've been eating for the last 90 days.
Really?
Now, let's say you switch to a ketogenic diet and you did that for 90 days. You'd be fine for those 90 days. You somewhere between 90 and 95 days, you'll start having reactions to the food that you've been eating. It's crazy. My opinion is, this is just my personal belief. There was this big flood in our history, and some guy on a boat was all that happened, in that was about 5,000 years ago. For the last 5,000 years, we've had 4 seasons.
Yes, we have.
And our bodies are accustomed to eating per 4 seasons, which happen to last right around 90 days.
I think you are absolutely right.
That's
That's the
that's my
whole, that's the microbiotic diet, correct?
exactly. From a microbiome standpoint, and from the standpoint of healing chronic issues,
Mm-hmm.
you're far better eating, for 2 weeks, eating a ton of raspberries
Mm.
and then going months without them, and then have a bunch of blueberries and then go months. You know what I'm saying? Have
Yeah,
lots of cucumbers in your diet for a little while, and then no
yeah,
cucumbers for a while. And
yeah.
you know, just that
Variety.
our microbiome does much better with that. In uh, it's I use
Really? I didn't know that. So that's a microbiome thing you're saying.
yes, yes. This is a
Oh.
microbiome thing. So if you rubbed your elbow
Hmm.
on a table every day, 3 times a day for 90 days straight, you develop a callus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you put the same 3 meals every day on your microbiome, eventually they
Interesting.
kind of get callous to that. Okay, they start getting irritated by that. We call those food allergies.
Oh my goodness. Really? Wow. I again, you have such a brilliant way of sharing information in with such a new lens, that it's easy to understand and it's almost like it clicks and you go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, what you just said actually makes perfect sense.
It's uh, it's a just a little different way of looking at it, but it's the truth. It's really simple, actually.
Wow. So food allergies, you're making a case, because of course I did a fit test again and it came back that I'm deeply allergic to cranberries. Go figure. Of course, wheat and dairy. And then, next level down was, wait for it, apples, pears, oranges, bananas, and spinach.
Right.
And I remember my doctor calling me and saying, this is the weirdest list of allergies I have ever seen in anybody. I have never seen someone allergic to all fruits and vegetables. And
Mhm.
of course, it wasn't all fruits and vegetables, but it was
Right. Right.
significant. Well, of course, because I've been living on fruits and vegetables for about 2 years. And
Right.
so,
Right.
to your point, that's completely an unhealthy way of living, even if you're having fruits and veggies, because you've got to switch it around 90 days.
Right.
I'm going to try
It's
that.
a little bit of rotation. I'm working on a diet plan. It's a book I'm writing at the moment on this actual concept. And there's Dr. Tony Jimenez, I think,
Hmm.
has just written a book. I don't know if he's released it yet or not, but we've talked about it quite a bit, and he has a book on this. And it's, he's had 30 years as an oncologist working with cancer patients,
Hmm.
and this is exactly the same. He's come to the exact same conclusion. you know
Very interesting.
diet, we put someone on the
Mhm.
Gerson therapy, which is excellent, and they do fantastic for 3 months. Then they start crashing. Why? Why
Mm.
is that? Why is that? And so we switch them to paleo diet, and all of a sudden they do great. 3 months later, they start, the lab work starts getting worse. They start having fatigue. They start having all these symptoms again, and we see that. And Dr. Jimenez has seen that in the cancer clinics for the
Oh,
last 30
wow.
years. And so it's a different concept. It's not new. It's just very different to anything that's being marketed at the moment.
Well, let's do this. We're going to do a boot camp. Right,
Perfect.
Dr. Nuzum? We are going to do a boot camp that's going to start as a 90-day boot camp. And it's going to have, all our boot camps are 14-day boot camps, those of you who are listening or watching that know this. But we're going to make it into a 14-day boot camp that continues for 90 days because it's going to be the same meal plan. And then we're going to switch it out every 90 days. So you have a fresh set of recipes based on the season. And of course, it's all going to dovetail into the book that you're working on and your formulation. So I'm really super excited about this. We could gab on forever. We've got so many more topics. I'm going to have Dr. Nuzum back. We're going to talk about infections and we're going to talk about inflammation next. But for now, Dr. Nuzum, I want to thank you so much for your brilliant insights, for your dedication, for your commitment to helping get the truth out. So any last parting words on vitamins?
Vitamins, mega doses are great for short periods of time. You don't need mega doses for long periods of time. Okay, so long periods of time, or anything over in about 14 to 21 days, if mega dosing of vitamins will start to be detrimental after about that time because you're getting too much of a good thing. Okay, so if you're taking a multivitamin, I personally, it's just me personally, with my children, I use things like organogreens from organics. That's what we use as a multivitamin, quote unquote.
Mm.
Okay, there's 90 some different fruits and vegetables in that. It's you're getting freeze dried juice of those organically grown fruits and vegetables in that. That's just something that we use. I'm not touting this. This is just personally, this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are we'll use a multivitamin for the ladies in the house, right around that time of the month to offset, different symptoms and whatnot, helps them make it through that without having, it being so stressful in their system,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't typically have to stay on that for a long period of time, but it's okay. That's just us personally. And
Mm-hmm.
we're very healthy. We have very good diet. We've
Mm-hmm.
been very healthy for a long time. Um, so that's, I guess, as an example, this is what I do personally. And you can do whatever you want.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing with us kind of what your personal routine is as well. And I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. And for the rest of you, there are so many insights in here. If you've got gout, take parsley, get out in the sun, eat some fresh fruits and vegetables. You now know what your plate needs to look like. So if you love this episode, please share it with your loved ones, with your friends, family. Give it a 5-star rating. Thank you, because that's what helps drive more people to watch it. And I'm going to see you smiling on another one of these episodes. I'll talk to you soon. Stay smiling.
Thank you.